Billy Beattie was a high-ranking member of a brutal Irish gang known as the Westies because they terrorized the West Side section of Manhattan known as Hell's Kitchen.
Myself, I was involved in burglaries, safe crackings, drugs interstate, shylocking, murder, extortion.
Loan sharking or shylocking was one of the Westies' top rackets, a business they shared with the Italian mafia, and in particular with the Gambino crew run by Roy DeMeo.
Well, the Westies were the farm team of the DeMeo crew. Whenever the Westies had money that they wanted to loan out, they got it from Roy. It was Roy's money. They paid Roy a small piece of the action.
The Westies were known to just be, you know, as crazy as the DeMeo crew. They were doing basically what we were doing.
The Westies were led by Jimmy Coonan and his second-in-command, hitman Mickey Featherstone.
In law enforcement circles in New York City, Mickey Featherstone was by far the most feared white man in New York City.
He was a killer machine.
Like Roy DeMeo, the Westies were known to murder on a whim and built a reputation on their bloodlust. One man who understood such methods was Ruby Stein, Manhattan's biggest loan shark. The Westies decided there wasn't room for them both and targeted Stein for a hit. But before they did, they borrowed all his money.
$40,000, $75,000, everybody was borrowing. It was obviously this guy was checking out. He was leaving. Everyone knew it except him.
It was May 5th, 1977, when Westies leader Jimmy Coonan brought Ruby Stein to a gang-owned bar on the guise of having a drink.
As he entered the bar, he walked in, and I locked the door behind him, and he was shot 5 times in the chest. And then we all took turns shooting him. As he fell on the floor, that's how quick the plastic came out. They had him severed, ripped apart in about an hour like mad dogs. When Jimmy severed his head, he passed it around and says, "Hey, feel how heavy it is." I mean, I just couldn't deal with it. You know, I mean, Jesus. We opened the bar, an hour later, we're serving drinks.
It was the first time Beattie had seen the dismembering process. He watched as the Westies took Stein's body parts out of the bar in garbage bags and fed them to the fish in the East River. But days later, Ruby Stein's torso surfaced. Coonan had forgotten the key step in the disposal process.
Jimmy was still in the learning process of cutting people up, so he forgot to rip out the lungs and the torso. I remember meeting him on the New Jersey Turnpike, and he was so pissed off. He was hitting the side of his car. He was, "Damn it, I forgot to rip the lungs out."
With a body came a murder investigation, just the break the authorities were looking for. They'd been watching the Westies for years, but only watching.
It was almost impossible to ever get an inroad into the Westies for all the same reasons that it used to be impossible to get an inroad into the mafia. They terrorized everyone so much that people would rather go to jail than tell you about the Westies.
The Witness Protection Program was about to change that attitude. Billy Beattie was worried about his future with the Westies. A year after the Stein murder, he was the last living witness against Jimmy Coonan.
The other murderers were already dead. 3 other people were already killed that were part of it. It was left me and Jimmy.
Coonan decided to eliminate Billy Beattie and put out a $50,000 contract on his head. Billy packed up his family and left town.
I was on the lam for about 6 years. Broke, trying to live up in the mountains. Talking about a city boy. I mean, the only trees I ever saw was Central Park.
Finally, Beattie could no longer deny the urge to return to his old haunts. In 1984, 7 years after the Ruby Stein murder, Billy moved back to the West Side.
I was here about 2 years when the hit the fan. I was sitting at dinner one night, and I saw Mickey Featherstone on TV. And I said, "Damn it, I'm in a lot of trouble." He had rolled over for the government. And he knew what I had done with Jimmy Coonan inside this bar, our bar.
That night, Billy sat down with his family and explained the situation.
I said, "I know this fella, I know him well." I said, "He's going to implicate me in things that's happened." And I says, "The FBI's coming to see me."
It wasn't the FBI, but the New York City police who called him for questioning.
And as soon as I got downtown, there was about 6 of them told me I was indicted for the murder of Ruby Stein. And my first reaction was that f***ing Mickey. And that's exactly what it was. I told him, take your hands off me. I said, I got something to tell you.
Beatty agreed to tell them all he knew about the Westies and pleaded guilty to racketeering, which carries a potential 20-year sentence.
And in return, the government promised to tell the sentencing judge all about his cooperation. Obviously, the hope of the witness is that he'll get a reduced sentence, and it's usually a well-founded hope because the best way the government has of recruiting accomplice witnesses is by giving them some benefit at the end of the case, but there's absolutely no guarantee.
They say no guarantees, but everybody bullshit a little bit. Everybody dressed it up just a little bit better. I think it's automatic. It's part of the sales pitch.
With Beatty, Featherstone, and other cooperating witnesses, prosecutors announced indictments against Jimmy Coonan and 9 other Westies for murder and racketeering. Beatty found himself trusting no one, not his old gang who wanted him dead, and not the government who was selling him a deal.
And then I met a fellow like Art Ruffles.
FBI agent Ruffles became the case agent for Billy, as he had been for Dominic Montiglio.
My first impression was a U-boat commander. He looked like a tough son of a bitch. I believed him. I really believed him. In a short time, I respected the man. Matter of fact, I told him one time, I'm giving you everything I know my whole life. And if you wanted to hurt me, you can do that. You'll have to live with it. Looked me in the eye and he says, I'm going to be with you all the way.
But according to former U.S. Marshal Bud McPherson, that sort of sensitivity by the FBI case agent is part of the game.
Don't forget, the witness is testifying for the FBI agent and for the U.S. attorney. They want to be the good cop. Well, where are they going to find the bad cop? They need a boogeyman. And the Marshal Service is the boogeyman.
The marshals are stuck with the thankless task of relocating the witnesses. Billy and his wife were packed off to St. Louis, not a city of their choosing.
I didn't fit. People looked at me immediately and told me where I was from. They told me where I was from. I said, Jesus. I mean, they didn't know Westie, but they knew New York. They knew it's written all over me.
If his new home was a shock, it got worse with the new lifestyle imposed by the program. According to Beatty, his mail could be read by marshals and phone calls were not private.
They would patch it through and monitor the phone calls. Where again, you weren't allowed to discuss the weather conditions or sports events or anything that was going on in your location. Call you back in a few minutes.
But those difficulties were nothing compared to what was coming, as Billy Beatty took the stand and then nearly took his own life. The racketeering and murder trial of Westie's leader Jimmy Coonan and the rest of the gang began on October 5th, 1987 in Manhattan. It was a day federally protected witness Billy Beatty had been hoping would never come.
It's all bullshit to that point. You know, maybe everybody's going to die or plead guilty. You know, there's always a hope. But the day you walk out that door, it's a different thing.
Beatty had a big case of rat anxiety, testifying against men he had stolen and killed with for more than a decade. But once on the stand, he found testifying surprisingly simple.
I never knew what it was, to tell the truth. I lied my whole damn life. There was nothing rehearsed, nothing made up. This was everything I had shelved in my head for all these years. It was very easy. I guess it was like a brain enema. Just ran right out. There was no stopping me.
Beatty, I think, didn't present himself as something that he wasn't. I mean, he acknowledged that he'd committed terrible crimes.
Beatty knew his testimony and that of fellow government witness Mickey Featherstone hurt Coonan.
The real criminals were testifying. I mean, how are you going to take this guy down? By a nun coming in and saying he's a bad guy? No. Co-workers were coming in. Guys that did what he did.
The proof's in the pudding because the defendants were convicted on virtually all the counts.
In recognition of his cooperation with American justice, Beatty's sentence was reduced to just 18 months in a special witness security isolation unit.
You're not in a luxury prison. You're in prison. You're in a different unit, a different building. You get the same bed and the same 3 squares a day. You don't get extra privileges, you know. You're just contained away from people that might hurt you.
When he got out, Beatty was relocated again, but he was instantly aware his status had changed.
You're not valuable no more. Now you're a burden to the marshals. You're just a guy that they got to keep out of trouble.
To do that, witnesses are encouraged to get a job. But Beatty found that full of complications. The program had given him a new identity, but they did not create a work history.
You apply for a job and the guy says, well, where'd you work last? And you look at him. You don't know what to say to the guy.